You're not overthinking. Your mind just doesn't switch off. You walk into a room and instantly feel everything. The tension, the energy, the small things no one else seems to notice. And you don't just notice them. You hold on to them. You replay them. You try to understand what they meant, even hours later, even when nothing actually happened. And the worst part is, you can't stop doing it. Not when you want to relax, not when you want to feel normal. It just keeps going, in the background, all the time. And if this feels familiar, you're not just an overthinker. You might be someone who is too aware. And that changes everything, because being too aware isn't just a personality trait, it's a pattern, a very specific one. And it usually starts long before you ever notice it. Some people are born with it. Their nervous system is simply more sensitive. They don't just experience the world, they absorb it. Everything feels more intense, more detailed, more real. But for others, this awareness wasn't a gift. It was something they had to learn, a way to stay safe, a way to predict what might happen next. Reading the room, sensing moods, paying attention to every small signal, just to avoid getting hurt. And over time, that awareness becomes automatic, not something you turn on, but something that never turns off. And that's where things begin to shift, because what once protected you starts working against you. You begin to live in a constant state of analysis, not loudly, not obviously, but quietly in the background. Every conversation becomes something to interpret. Every silence feels like it means something. Every reaction gets questioned, not because you want to overthink, but because your mind doesn't know how not to. Even simple moments start to feel complicated. Someone takes a little longer to reply, and your mind fills in the gap. Someone's tone changes slightly, and you replay the conversation, trying to understand what shifted, what you missed, what it could mean. And even when you find an answer, it doesn't feel final, because your mind immediately creates another possibility, another explanation, another version of the same moment, and slowly, your mind turns into a place where nothing feels certain anymore, only interpreted, only analyzed, only processed, and never fully felt. But that constant awareness comes with a cost, because it doesn't just point outward, it turns inward. You don't just notice the world, you start noticing yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your emotions, and suddenly, you're not just feeling something, you're watching yourself feel it. You feel sad, and immediately ask yourself why. You feel happy, and wonder if it's real. You say something in a conversation, and replay it seconds later, thinking about how it sounded, how it came across, what the other person might have thought. It's like part of you is always stepping outside, just to observe yourself from a distance. And the more this happens, the harder it becomes to just exist without analyzing it. Because nothing is just experienced anymore. Everything is evaluated. Everything is measured. Everything is questioned. And over time, you lose something without even realizing it. You lose the ability to be fully present, not because you don't want to be, but because your mind is always doing something else in the background. And this doesn't stop with you. It extends to other people. You begin to notice patterns in behavior, small inconsistencies, subtle signals that most people ignore. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. A compliment feels slightly off. A smile feels a little forced. A kind gesture feels like it might have a reason behind it. And even when something is genuine, part of your mind still questions it, not because you're negative, but because you're aware, too aware, and that awareness slowly changes how you connect. You become more careful, more observant, more controlled, not in a visible way, but internally, because part of you is always scanning, always trying to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. And while other people are just living, You're interpreting, and that creates a kind of distance, a quiet one, because even when you're with people, part of you is somewhere else, analyzing, processing, trying to understand. And that can feel lonely, not because you're alone, but because your mind never fully rests inside the moment. And this awareness doesn't just stay in your thoughts, it moves into your body. You feel everything more intensely. Other people's stress, their tension, their mood, it doesn't stay with them, it reaches you. You walk into a room and immediately feel the atmosphere, even if no one says anything. You sit next to someone who is anxious, and your body starts reacting too. You listen to someone talk about their problems, and hours later, you're still carrying that weight. And after a while, it becomes difficult to tell what's yours and what isn't, because everything blends together and your system stays active, alert, ready, even when nothing is wrong, even when you're safe. And this is where awareness slowly turns into something else. Control, not in an obvious way, but internally, trying to predict everything, understand everything, prepare for everything, so nothing catches you off guard. Your mind starts running simulations. What if this happens? What if that changes? What if something goes wrong? And even when things are fine, you're already thinking about what could go wrong next. Not because you want to, but because your mind is trying to protect you. And the more it tries to protect you, the more exhausting it becomes. Because you're not just living one moment, you're living 10 versions of the future at the same time. And eventually, you start to feel it. That constant pressure, that mental fatigue, that sense of never fully being at ease. And this is where most people think something is wrong with them. But the truth is, nothing is wrong with you. Your mind just learned to stay active for too long without ever learning when to stop. And that's the real problem. Not your awareness, but the lack of a boundary around it. Because awareness itself is not the issue. It's the constant need to engage with everything you notice, to analyze it, to carry it, to turn it into something meaningful, even when it doesn't need to be. And this is where things begin to change. Not by becoming less aware, but by becoming more selective. You start to notice things without attaching to them. You see something without needing to understand it completely. You feel something without immediately analyzing it. And at first, this feels unnatural because you're used to going deeper, further, always trying to find meaning. But slowly, something shifts. Your mind becomes quieter, not silent, but less intense, less demanding, less urgent. And for the first time, you begin to experience something different. Space. Space between your thoughts. Space between what happens and how you react to it. And in that space, you get to choose what you follow, what you let go of, what actually matters, and what doesn't. And that changes everything, because now your awareness is no longer controlling you. You're guiding it. You still notice things. You still understand people deeply. You still feel more than most, but it no longer drains you in the same way, because now you're not carrying everything, only what belongs to you. And slowly, your mind starts to feel lighter, not because the world changed, not because people became simpler, but because you stopped trying to solve everything you see. And in that moment, something important returns. Presence. You're no longer outside your life, watching it happen. You're inside it again, living it, feeling it, without needing to analyze every part of it. And if this feels familiar, you're not alone, and you're not broken. You've just been aware for too long without a boundary. But that's something you can change, starting in the next moment. Because the truth is, being too aware was never the real problem. It was never about how much you see or how deeply you understand things. It was about what you felt responsible for. All the things you thought you had to figure out, all the emotions you thought you had to carry, all the moments you believed you needed to solve, but not everything you notice is yours to hold. And once you start to see that, something begins to shift. You don't react as quickly. You don't go as deep into every thought. You don't feel the need to chase every meaning. And life starts to feel a little lighter. Not because it suddenly becomes simple, but because you stop making it heavier than it needs to be. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, your mind doesn't feel like something you have to fight. It just becomes something you observe, something you experience, without needing to control it all the time. And that's the moment where awareness changes. It stops being a burden and becomes something quieter, something softer, something that no longer pulls you away from your life, but allows you to actually be in it. And if you've been living in your head for a long time, this shift won't happen all at once, but it starts the moment you realize you don't have to follow every thought just because you can see it, and that awareness is where everything begins to change.